Hi, I'm Jonathan Knotts, and my wife Kelly of 20 years and my son Jonathan of 15 years have a story we'd like to share with you about how the Rock Family Worship Center drastically transformed our life. You could go back as far as you'd like, but probably one of the biggest things I would include in the backstory is how many times I shouldn't be here. I could go on, and not close calls. They happened. We had wrecks where I went off a cliff. I was in a body cast. I was in traction, a coma. We hit a train, and I went through the windshield. I mean, people die from lesser things every day. And I know I'm not bulletproof, but God kept me around for a reason. I should have died countless times during my addiction. The amount of painkillers I was taking was 8 or 10 times the lethal limit for humans. I took it every day. And so I was lucky I ever woke up. Probably the biggest stopping point was when God really set me down and I got sick. I sold cars for 15 years. I was a car salesman. I was really good at it. I enjoyed it. And I worked 80 hours a week for 15 years. And one day I got a cold. And I knew I had a cold, knew I couldn't breathe, and it went on for a few weeks. And I told them, it's an act of Congress to get a couple of days off in the car. But I told them I got to go for a couple of days. And they begrudgingly let me go. And I left this building, which is the last place I ever worked. I sold cars at a lot of places. But when we moved to Fayetteville, I worked at the Toyota store and I worked here. And I left that office thinking I'd be back in a couple of days. Went to the doctor and he said, "You're gonna have to stay here for a while." And I said, "Well, that doesn't work because I've got a big deal coming in Thursday and I can't do that, but I can come back maybe Monday after the weekend." And he said, "Son, you don't understand." He grabbed me by the arm and he said, "You're gray." He said, "You're like 3 days from dying. And if I let you leave, I'm liable. You're going to be in the hospital for a while." And I was in the hospital for 3 months that time. And I had pneumonia that just wouldn't heal up. And they sent me home and I got a little bit better. I got a little bit worse. Went to the hospital again in 3 more months and they tapped my lung again. This happened 3 times. And finally, the last one was out of my pig-headed ignorance. I died. My wife told me, "You got to get an ambulance. You're worse. You got to go." And I wouldn't listen. I said, "No, I'll make it. We'll just drive to the hospital. I'll make it." And I waited the last day and I got halfway out to the car and I died. They told me when I woke up from the coma a couple days later that my poor son, 5 years, was beating on my chest, telling me, "Daddy, don't die. Daddy, don't die." And I'm glad I wasn't there to see that. They ended up having to remove my lung, my left lung, 2/3 of it, because it rotted inside of my chest. It became necrotic and it just wouldn't heal. And of course, I was in a wheelchair. I was on a big pull-behind tank of oxygen, and I couldn't walk from me to you. And we started trying to get better on our own and started, for lack of better words, dabbling in church because I remembered it from Bible school, knew who God was, had paper-thin salvation, what I call fire insurance salvation, but no relationship, and never really found anywhere we felt home. And it was about that time the Rock Family Worship Center came and knocked on our door at Thanksgiving, and they were passing out turkeys. And my son later told me that he didn't know we needed it, which is good because we were faking it pretty good because we were rolling change and borrowing money from family and friends. But when they came and they knocked on the door, my wife said, "You should go talk to them." I took the turkey, told them thank you, and let them go. But I took it for some reason, let's go confront them, because I knew what God was about. I knew what church was, and it hadn't worked for me. But I had a very interesting conversation with that lady, and I said, "What do you want from me?" I said, you don't need me. You're trying to get me to come, are you? I'm sick. You can see I can't come. I said, "What do you want, my money?" I said, "You can't. I don't have any money. You see, I can't give you money." All I knew about their church was they didn't have a brand, and that they used to be in a bar, and that's all I knew. And I said, "You're not one of those places, are you, that thinks this and this and thinks I'm supposed to come, I'm supposed to give you my money, and believes in all the miracles and all that. That was good for the Bible days, but that's old Jesus. This is classic Jesus. This is low-calorie diet Jesus now. We don't have that anymore." And I was lucky that was Pastor Angie that had knocked on my door. And she really put the onus on me. She said, "We are one of those places. We do believe in this and this and that, and you need it, and your family needs it, and you should come get you some of it." And a couple weeks later, we came because, we owed them a turkey. But we heard they had a good kids program, and the last place we visited, they just basically babysat them. So my son got it first, and by it, I mean, the presence of God, and he got it through Kids Quest. He was 9. And he would come home after Pastor Jeff and Deliska had poured into him and give us all kinds of examples of things he had learned above and beyond the basic, Noah and the things I learned in Bible school. And he would tell me, hey, this verse really means this, or let's look it up in a different translation at night. So we kept coming, and it was unusual to us. It was not at all the type of worship service we had been in, and I thank the Lord for that. In our third service, we were having the praise and worship, and my wife and I, we looked at each other, and we were both visibly shaking, and we were both crying, and we didn't have to say a word. We knew that this was it. This was that God thing that people talk about. And I could almost audibly hear him saying, this is my son, whom I'm well pleased. And I hadn't heard that since I was in Sunday school at 7 years old. And we got it right at the same time, the same moment. And I don't think it would have worked as well. He knew what we needed. He's a good father. Right over there in Wonderworks, where we now serve and we lead classes, I got to, before the remodeling was done, I got to write verses in my old sin-filled office. I mean, I would have, sin delivered to my door in my office in the form of medication. And I got to write scriptures about, lean not on your own understanding, that in all your ways acknowledge him, and that everything will work out together for the good if you love the Lord. Totally different than my mindset used to be. And now I get to see little lives being changed, like my son's little life was changed. And then I get to see it come back home to the parents, and to get to see the natural progression of lives beginning in Christ where my life in the world ended. And I think that's a really awesome thing, and I love having that connection. I would implore everyone that we've led the outreach because we are children of outreach. We were products of outreach. We get to produce outreach. It's something I came up with. And that when they put out those emails and they ask for people to go knock on a door, to go do something, take out a turkey, take out cookies, go play bingo at the old folks' home like we're doing this week, you got to go. Beat down the door to get your name on the list, because I think we're worth it. I think you got to go find the next us that's out there, and they can do so much more than we've ever done. And I thank you. I thank the Rock Family Worship Center Fayetteville. I thank the pastors Rusty and Lisa for having this heart that they've put on Pastor Don and Angie, that they've transplanted here. I thank you. My family thanks you. And there's not enough to say about that.